Hello, this is Matt Russell from the Daily FX Education team, and today I will be discussing stochastic and how I use it in my own trading. And what I wanted to do today is bring up all three oscillators, and I often use them in combination. And it's very important to understand the strengths and weaknesses of each of the oscillators. So in terms of MACD, if you recall from the videos and also my previous video on MACD, it can be very reliable. The problem is that signal can often be late. It's not as timely. Now, stochastic is sort of the inverse. Stochastic is not going to be as reliable. It's more likely to give false signals, but it's going to be very timely in that the successful signals that it does give are going to be relatively early. And so it's not a matter of one being better than the other. If you're just looking at this in terms of saying you can make the statement that MACD is more reliable than stochastic. And if you just, on that statement alone, then obviously we should use MACD. But there's obviously a little bit more to the story than just reliability. And in this case, that means timeliness. Now, RSI is sort of in the middle of these two extremes. And you should understand that when you are using RSI. But for this example, I just wanted to contrast the differences between MACD and stochastic. So using stochastic in your own trading, how are you going to do that? So what I would suggest, if you're going to use stochastic, you should not use it as a standalone signal. Personally, I'm never going to enter a trade if I have a stochastic crossover. Again, because we're speaking about reliability. It's not going to be as reliable. So what am I going to do? I'm going to use stochastic in combination, ideally with a price-specific indicator. My preferred method of entry is going to be simple support and resistance line. So let's say we have prices brushing up towards a resistance line. And let's say this resistance line is at 140, and prices right now are about 139.95. And I see that prices start to move down to, let's say, 139.80. I have a stochastic cross. That's my signal to go short. Again, but it's not as reliable. I have to understand that there's a chance it could be a false signal. But with prices that close to a clear resistance line, I can go ahead and enter that trade. It's not always about finding as many confirmations as you can, because if you do, let's say you find 7 or 8 confirmations, yes, that trade is more likely to work out, but in waiting for those confirmations, you're going to have to take more risk when you do enter the trade. So it's finding that sweet spot of having the best confirmations as well as you taking the least amount of risk. Because in the example I just gave, let's say prices are at 139.80, I can go ahead and enter that trade and place a stop confidently at 140.20. And I'm only risking, let's say, 40 pips on a daily chart. And on a daily chart, that 40 pips of risk, I can make at least a couple of hundred pips in upside. And that means an extremely favorable risk-reward ratio. So again, we can't look at these things just based on reliability alone. It's a matter of reliability and timeliness and taking the least amount of risk to make the most amount of gains. Again, my name is Matt Russell from the Daily FX Instructor team. Thank you for listening.